Last week, we went over the easiest campaigns for new players, but what about those of you who have mastered the basics and are looking for something new? Whether that new means a challenge, a stomp, or just plain weird, let's count down the top 10 most unique campaigns in Warhammer 3. Shout out to channel partner Holy for sponsoring this video. If you want a steady supply of gamer energy in tasty beverage form, then they have you covered with their line of sugar, taurine, and BS-free drinks powders. Check them out at the link in the description and use code Colonel5 for £5 off your first order, or code Colonel for 10% off any order. Thanks to Holy for partnering with the channel. Now, onto the list. First up, we have Taurox. Of the options I mentioned at the start, Taurox absolutely belongs in the stomp category. While he may not be as insane as he was when he hit the game in the final DLC of Warhammer 2, he's still a pretty insanely strong lord and one you can absolutely raise the world with no problem. All of the beastmen are crazy, but Taurox is just on another level, and it's down to a number of factors. First of all, the dude himself is a massive hulking bull that can quite literally charge straight through most enemy armies totally by himself, making all those early battles into a spectator sport for the rest of his army. Then his mechanics come into play and it suddenly all makes sense why he's regarded as being so strong. Alongside Dread and the Max of Ruination, Taurox can make use of Momentum and Rampage. These two systems go hand in hand and, to put it simply, are a little bit bananas. Momentum is gained by constant battle victories and you can see your counter of this at the top of the screen. As long as you're above 0, your Rampage continues and grows in power. Once you reach certain tiers of Rampage, you can choose to claim various rewards that can quickly scale up in power to some pretty absurd levels. Momentum can also be spent to reset Taurox's movement range, meaning you can move a pretty insane distance across the map in a single turn, and as long as you keep battling and winning, can do this for as long as you want. It's a truly ridiculous campaign that should be played at least once, so if you haven't already, give it a go. Next up, Réponse de Lyonesse. Now, I may be Bretonnia's biggest hater, but I can't deny that Joan of Arcann's Desert is a pretty cool and extremely unique campaign. She's leading somewhat of a crusade into the desert, and with that comes a number of unique mechanics. She has to manage water to ensure her armies can stay healthy and hydrated as they roam through the dry desert. The last thing you want is pulling up to a battle with some kidney stones. As well as this, her much more fun mechanic allows her to confederate the nearby Bretonnian factions by taking out hostile factions. This allows you to get quite the snowball rolling, since not only will you gain land from winning battles and occupying settlements, you'll gain your allies' territory at the same time, giving you a massive boost early on. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, since it's land you'll need to develop and the occasional army you may need to disband to save money, but if you can stay on top of it, you'll be light years ahead of any nearby faction in a matter of turns. Combine that with the potential of the Bretonnian economy to be truly insane, and you have the recipe for a campaign that can quickly turn into a total stomp that actually feels a little bit earned. Granted, it's a stomp where you have to play as Bretonnia, but still. Plus, the desert doesn't see the most playtime, so it's nice to spice things up outside of the usual Bretonnian coastline. Next, Marcus Wolfheart. This guy has been one of my favourite campaigns since he was added almost 5 years ago. Oh, crap. In essence, he's been sent down to Lustria to hunt down the Lizardmen for reasons, and the gameplay reflects this perfectly. And yes, I do see your concern about a British person talking about how fun a campaign is where you go to a foreign land and hunt down the locals, but we're just going to gloss straight over that and talk about why this campaign is so unique. Fair warning, while the uniqueness does add a lot of fun, it also adds quite a bit of challenge. You can't really recruit most units normally and instead have to wait on shipments from the Empire, where you choose from a selection of units, meaning you're very limited in your army building options, forcing you to roll with the punches instead of making the exact same army every single time, which, let's be honest, is normally what happens in every other campaign. You also have the hostility meter, which fills up as you do anything, causing the locals to become more aggressive and powerful in their aggression, meaning the pressure never really lets up. Then, alongside all of this, you have his 4 legendary heroes, which in reality are just 4 hero types from other factions, but still, they each have their own questlines, granting them powerful items and abilities, making them a lot of fun to use in battle. Putting all the heroes into your Marcus army and taking on the continent is a blast, and even I, as a normal difficulty laid-back gamer, can appreciate the challenge. If you enjoy the Empire but want to get away from managing it, then Marcus is the campaign for you. Next we have Rakarth, and this is another lord that was shipped away to Lustria, but instead of colonizing it by killing all the locals, Rakarth is here to instead enslave the locals, which is still not great, but just so happens to be a lot of fun to play. Now, his campaign plays like any other Dark Elf with one key difference. Whenever he fights basically anything, he has a chance to gain some monsters, and this changes depending on what and where he's battling. This is all random chance, but if you're fighting Lizardmen, which you are right out the gate, these potential monsters can be feral Stegodons or Carnosaurs, and once he has them in his pens, he can instantly recruit them to any of his armies, and I'm sure you can see where this is going. The cycle of battling an army and then using units from that faction to empower yourself and destroy whatever is in front of you is an absolute treat, and yet another ridiculous stomp that everyone should try at least once. You can just play the campaign normally and roll with whatever you randomly pick up, or you can game the system, learn what gives you the best odds of getting high tier monsters, and grind a few of those until you're ruling the world with armies chock full of giant beasties. It's fairly hard to lose this campaign, since getting any monsters early on is so stupidly strong, so getting a steady supply of high tier picks is just plain stupid. Add on that Lustria is pretty much the perfect place to farm units, and you have a recipe for a pretty top tier campaign as far as fun is concerned. Coming to the midpoint, we have Eltharion the Grim. Eltharion was added at the peak of Warhammer 2, at least in terms of player count, and while he likely wasn't the cause of that, I can't deny that his campaign is pretty cool. For starters, he has one of those campaigns where he starts in 2 locations, with his own army being in the Badlands, with another one stationed back home in Tor of Ret on Ulthuan. You can choose whether you want to maintain both or just focus on the Badlands, but either way, it's totally different to any other high elf, with the exception of Imric, who is also pretty unique but not quite as deep, which is why I didn't get picked. Alongside this, he also has the Dungeons of Athol Tamara, which allow him to unlock all kinds of buffs and bonuses for his faction, including totally unique units to his campaign, mists over the entire island of Ulthuan warding off invaders, and even a prison to capture, interrogate, and murder other enemy lords. Now, to be honest, it takes a lot of work to use all of Eltharion's mechanics to their full effect, but once you do, it's a pretty crazy campaign. Rampaging through the Badlands, taking on anything green you come across, and using the spoils to build up your dungeon is a great gameplay loop that never fails to be rewarding. One of the main things that makes most Warhammer 3 campaigns boring is a lack of things to do outside of endless conquest. This campaign will get that problem eventually, but you're looking at a lot to do until then, so give it a try and enjoy. A little bit of a cheat for this one, but I went with any Chaos Dwarf. Honestly, any of them are boatloads of fun and absolutely unique in every aspect. I'd probably recommend Drazhoath if I really had to pick one, but as I say, dealer's choice because they're all great. So, you know how normal campaigns work, where you take settlements and build them up to earn cash, which you can then use to build more and recruit armies. Well, the Chaos Dwarves basically don't do any of that. They do take settlements and they do make armies, but instead you're creating mines and factories that produce raw materials and armaments, which are then used to unlock advanced unit capacity and imbue them with powerful effects, as well as being used for trading caravans. They are quite possibly the most bloated faction in the game in terms of just how many mechanics they have, not to mention how obscenely cracked their roster is, but what they undoubtedly are is unique. Fair warning, their campaign will probably take you a few tries to get used to what you need to do to play, but once you get it, they're a lot of fun and you're never short of things to do. You have everything mentioned so far, as well as the Tower of Zar, which has all kinds of bonuses, and even lets you confederate the other nearby Chaos Dwarves. They're an evil faction, so they can also fight whoever they want, and it makes sense. Their roster is cracked, but a lot of fun to use. You just can't go wrong with them, apart from the price tag of the DLC. Speaking of DLC, Malachi Mackayson, one of the lords from the most recent DLC, and while he wasn't my personal favourite, he is for sure the most unique lord in that trio and of all the dwarves in general. He has all the standard fixtures of the Dowie, like the Grudges, the Forge, the excellent defensive roster, but then he just has all this other amazing stuff. Start off gentle, he starts with Gotrek and Felix, which might not sound like much, but those 2 heroes on turn 1 makes his army pretty unstoppable. He has the Spirit of Grungy airship, which not only allows him to recruit basically his entire roster wherever he goes, but can also provide him and nearby armies with all kinds of buffs and bonuses, up to and including summoning this behemoth gunship into battle. He also has his adventures, which give him all kinds of side quests to take part in, fighting all kinds of enemies and unlocking truly, disgustingly overpowered buffs for his units. He's just one of those campaigns where there's no shortage of things to do, since he just has so many mechanics that you'll always be able to take part in at least one of them. Add on that Malachi himself is also pretty fun to use in battle, and you have a recipe for a very, very fun campaign. Any campaign can be fun for 50 turns, but with this guy you can be well past 150 and still be having a blast, which in this game is no mean feat. Taking the bronze medal in 3rd place, we have Oxyotl, another from the final DLC of Warhammer 2, and while he may not be as cracked as Taurox, he's far more unique and offers some extremely fun mechanics. You start out in the Chaos Ways at the southern tip of the map, but very quickly you'll be dispatched all across the map with a variety of objectives that pretty much boil down to screwing over Chaos. The mechanic we talked about in our Faction Rework podcast, where the Great Plan just tells you to do random shit, this is basically as close as you can get to that, which right now, in-game. It's fairly simple, but adds a ton of variety to the game and totally changes up how you play it. Instead of expanding from your standing settlement, you instead secure the area for some background income and safety, and then roam the map hunting chaos and setting up bases anywhere you fancy with your silent sanctums. These give you all kinds of buffs when battling in the local province, as well as allowing you to teleport to them at will, making it much more possible to keep hold of these outposts than it would be otherwise. Jedi from the Discord really summed it up in this one image. You're basically playing as Lizard Viet Cong, but instead of Americans, you fight against Chaos, which is totally different. Probably. If you're sick of fighting in the same areas of the map every game, this guy is a great pick, since you'll practically be doing a world tour. In 2nd place, we have Death Master Snitch. Now, while Ikit Claw may be the most fun Skaven campaign I mentioned in the last video, and besides, if you're looking for something totally unique, then Snitch has to take the top spot for the Raz. He has all of the usual mechanics you'd expect from Skaven, so ambush, food, undercities, general chaos and all things, but alongside that he has his shadowy dealings, which are where he can do a wee bit of trolling. Things start out fairly tame with gaining vision over an area or stealing cash from a settlement, but once you level up this mechanic, you can quickly be assassinating enemy lords and spawning rebels in their lands to make your conquests a whole lot easier. This all integrates excellently in your general campaign gameplay, by using your Eshin Lords and Heroes for these missions once they're at high enough level, making the battle XP grind just as important as the mechanical progression. Alongside this, you can also take on contracts from the other Skaven clans in exchange for favour, which allows use of their units, encouraging a lot more strategic army building than the usual gigantic roster of the rats. It's limiting, yes, but in that limit you're forced to be creative, so if you're looking for a change of pace, it's a perfect fit. Plus, he's miles away from the other rats, so not only do you get a change of mechanics, but also a change of scenery, and sometimes that's just as important. And finally, in first place, could it really be anyone else with the most unique gameplay in the game than the Changeling? Playing him can quite literally feel like playing a different game sometimes. Now yes, you still roam around the map, you're attacking armies and settlements, but aside from that, everything is different. Instead of the focus being on conquest and taking as many settlements as you can, you instead want to tactically attack settlements to set up cults, which are built under normal settlements, similar to Underseas from the Skaven. These cults house your recruitment buildings as well as symbiotic and parasitic buildings, which can aid or leech from the host depending on your needs. You're doing all of this to achieve specific objectives in each theatre of the map. Completing these objectives unlocks a final battle, and completing enough of these battles allows you to take part in the grand scheme, which is similar to just have a big fight and spread chaos around the map in the name of our Lord and Father Sinch. Add on that the Changeling can change into basically any other legendary lord in the game during battle, and you've got yourself one incredibly unique campaign. Now, it's also one of the easiest campaigns, since unless something has changed since I last played him, you literally can't lose unless you try to, but still, it's a lot of fun to play at least once, even if it is a part of one of the most controversial, and if you ask me, still overpriced bits of DLC content to ever hit the game. And that's my list. Was there a campaign that you think I should have included? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, and if you want to know the best campaigns for new players, then check out this video going over the top 10.